In the United States, Malcom X's family announced they will file a lawsuit against the FBI, the CIA, and New York PD for conspiring to assassinate the civil rights activists. Also, Moscow's UN representative describes as hypocrites the countries that blame Russia for the destruction of the regional and global security system. And in Palestine, the Israeli army killed 11 Palestinians and wounded over 100 during a raid on the city of Nablus in the northern occupied West Bank. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. The daughter of the U.S. civil rights activist Malcom X announced on 58th anniversary of the murder of the activist that she will file a lawsuit against the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, and the New York Police Department for conspiring to assassinate her father. At a press conference, attorney Ben Crump announced that on November 18, 2021, new evidence against the CIA, the New York Police Department, and the FBI, also the New York District Attorney, was confirmed and proven guilty. According to the attorney, this evidence was fraudulently withheld from the men who were wrongfully convicted of Malcolm's murder. Ilayazaz Shobath, the daughter of Malcom X, said the decision seeks to bring the truth to the case to light and bring justice to her father. Malcom X was a civil rights activist who was assassinated on February 21, 1965, while giving a speech in Harlem.
So today, at the Malcom X and Dr. Betty Shabazz Memorial and Educational Center, we announce and give formal notice to the City of New York, the State of New York, and the federal government and its agencies, the FBI and the CIA, that the family members intend to sue bring a wrongful death lawsuit based on these new revelations that have now finally been substantiated.
Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva calls for global regulation of internet platforms and an end to hate campaigns. During a UNESCO World Conference, the president made direct reference to the violent acts of January the 8th in Brasilia, when Bolsonaro's supporters broke into the headquarters of the three branches of government. The head of state emphasized that such acts were the culmination of a campaign started before, where they used lies and disinformation as an ammunition against democracy and the credibility of Brazilian institutions. Da Silva detailed that the conference is the beginning of a broad dialogue for the regulation and construction of a fair and balanced digital environment. And the U.S. singer and songwriter Tonya Boyd-Cannon delighted Cuban music lovers with her second concert at Havana's Museum of Fine Arts on Tuesday. Advocate of genres such as soul, reggae, funk, rock, and gospel, the singer's schedule during her stay in the Caribbean island includes a concert at the Martí Theater and a tour of art schools, cultural institutions, and community projects with the purpose of exchanging experiences with local creators and residents. Boyd-Cannon's visit is the result of a joint effort by the U.S. Embassy in Havana, Cuba's Ministry of Culture, the Cuban Institute of Music, and the City Historian's Office. The singer will be in Cuba until February 24th. Now we move on to other topics. Cuban firefighters and emergency teams continue their efforts to put out a major wildfire which affects wooded areas of Pinares de Mayari in the northeastern province of Holguín. The blaze started on Saturday after increasing winds facilitated the spread of flames, which so far have burned 12 kilometers of forest areas. Cuba's President Miguel Díaz-Canel informed that several zones of the country are being hit by intense drought and reiterated that all the population of the affected areas have been evacuated. The president also said that firefighters and members of the armed forces from several provinces have joined to battle the blaze. In the United States, a brutal winter storm knocked out power in California, closed interstate highways from Arizona to Wyoming, and prompted more than 1,200 flight cancellations. Few places were untouched by the wild weather, some at the opposite extreme. Record highs were forecast from the mid-Atlantic states down through Florida, with some places expected to reach up to 5 degrees Celsius above normal. The wintry mix was hitting hardest in the northern tier of the nation. Schools throughout the Dakotas, Minnesota, and Wisconsin were called off. In Wyoming, virtually every road was affected. In the northern U.S., a region accustomed to heavy snow, the snowfall could beat historic records. The storm will make its way towards the East Coast later this week. Let's take a short break. But first, remember you can follow us on our TikTok account at TeleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Moscow's representative to the United Nations described as hypocrites the countries that blame Russia for the destruction of the regional and global security system. Russia's permanent representative to the UN, Vasily Nebenzia, stressed at a special session of the General Assembly that at the end of 2021, Russia presented a number of concrete de-escalation and confidence-building initiatives, which were arrogantly rejected by the US and its allies. The Russian delegation denounced that the West rejected Moscow's proposals as they were turning Ukraine at all costs into a real military operation camp near Russia's borders. The Russian representative also sentenced that without a doubt it was not Ukraine that was at war with Russia, referring to the open participation of the United States and the European Union in the conflict. On Wednesday, Russian President Vladimir Putin took part in an event held in Helsinki on the occasion of the Day of the Defender of the Fatherland. After a concert in honor of the troops deployed in Ukraine, the president said that the armed forces of his country are fighting for its historical lands and its people. 2 days before celebrating 1 year of Russia's special military operation in Ukraine, the head of state noted that all those who support the fighters are also defenders of the homeland. The Russian president made a speech on the stage devoted to the conflict in Ukraine, among other issues, on the occasion of the Day of the Defenders of the Homeland, which will be celebrated on Thursday in Russia and other republics of the former Soviet Union, such as Belarus and Tajikistan. And the U.S. plans to supply Ukraine with special kits to convert free-fall bombs into GPS-guided projectiles. According to Bloomberg media outlet, these are the modern versions of the Joint Direct Attack Munition kits made by Boeing Company, which increase the range of the unguided bombs to more than 72 kilometers. The device can be attached to bombs weighing 907 kilograms. The Pentagon reported it will supply Ukraine with precision-guided aerial munitions as part of a $460 million military aid package the country will send to Kiev. The kits in question are used in the U.S. Air Force and Navy and were sold to more than 26 countries. And the U.S. President Joe Biden concluded this Wednesday his tour for Eastern Europe, in which he strove to seek the support to Ukraine from his NATO allies. In Warsaw, Biden held talks with Polish President Andrzej Duda, who shared with him the unconditional support for Kiev. The U.S. President also delivered a speech at the former royal castle, where, among other things, he announced that the United States will host the next NATO summit in 2024. On Wednesday, Biden met with the heads of state and government of 9 Eastern NATO countries and with the military bloc's Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg. Now we move on to other topics. Dozens of school children from different provinces of Syria, representing their peers from all over the country, gathered in Damascus to express their solidarity with the victims of the earthquake and their rejection of the coercive measures taken by the West to prevent them from trying to overcome the consequences of this natural disaster. Our correspondent in Damascus, Hisham Wanus, gives us more details.
The students raised national flags and carried banners with slogans calling for the lifting of what they described as an unjust and inhumane blockade imposed by the U.S., which deprives them of their rights and their dreams for the future. They presented their demands to the mission in Damascus on behalf of all their people.
We are here to ask the United Nations to lift the sanctions on Syria and end the blockade. And all the children of Syria came up today to make their voices heard around the world and to reassure them that the Syrian people are a people of peace. This sit-in is to show our solidarity with our brothers and sisters affected by the quake and to tell the whole world that we, the children of Syria, have the right to live and to learn, and therefore we demand the lifting of the blockade and the sanctions imposed on Syria, the unjust and dehumanizing sanctions that are burdening our lives.
The leadership of the Syrian Pioneers Organization and dozens of primary school teachers joined their students in their cry against the injustice of Western states, with Washington at the forefront, politicizing humanitarian aid to Syria in the midst of the country's current plight in the aftermath of the earthquake.
This is a cry of pain and at the same time a cry of hope that the world community will take a humane stand for the children of our country and for our children to regain their dream, their future and their hope in rebuilding this homeland, in rebuilding their country and in building their future, so that they can live like all the children of the world. The earthquake has caused a great reaction among the children of the homeland, so they have gathered here today in a very moving scene to express their rejection of the blockade and to demand the lifting of this blockade and these coercive measures imposed on Syria, because it is an unjust blockade, politicized, and its only aim is to bring the Syrian people to their knees and to humiliate them.
Dozens of Arab and foreign countries and the free peoples of the world are supporting the Syrians in their legitimate demand for the lifting of the coercive measures unilaterally imposed by the West on their country. A proof of this are the thousands of tons of humanitarian aid that, despite the blockade, have continued to reach the suffering people of Syria from the first moment of the earthquake until today.
TeleSUR, Damascus, Syria.
And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In Palestine, death toll after another raid by the Israeli regime in the West Bank rose to 11, including 1 child and 3 elderly people. According to local sources, over 100 people were injured in the brutal assault in neighborhoods in the city of Nablus. Local media says the injured are currently receiving medical attention in city hospitals. According to the Palestinian Health Ministry, 4 of these wounded are in serious conditions. 2 journalists covering the Israeli raid were also injured with live ammunition. The Red Crescent in Nablus denounced that many of the deceased lost their lives because of the Israeli army prevented its ambulances from reaching and evacuated the wounded. Given the situation, on Wednesday, Palestine requested the United Nations Security Council to hold an emergency session on the massacre committed by Israeli occupation forces in Nablus. Meanwhile, Foreign Affairs and Expatriates Minister Riyad Malki stated that the leadership has also requested the Council of the League of Arab States to convene at the level of permanent representatives, as well as the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, to condemn the Israeli massacre and ensure international protection for the Palestinian people. The incursion marked another episode of the deadliest days in the occupied West Bank since Israel ramped up raids at the start of 2021. The director of the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR Regional Bureau for West and Central Africa, Millicent Mutuli, said on Wednesday that the agency has a growing concern for the number of people fleeing the coastal countries to escape crisis in Burkina Faso.
Concern for the number of people fleeing to coastal countries to escape crisis in Burkina Faso. And these numbers have risen quite significantly in the last several weeks. We have seen a marked increase in the number of people arriving in Côte d'Ivoire, in Ghana, in Benin, and also in Togo. Those are the 4 countries bordering Burkina Faso's southern border, and they are fleeing due to security incidents in their villages close to these borders. Overall, we are calling for support to governments in the coastal countries. They will need support, not just them, but also UNHCR and partners, so that we are ready to respond as necessary.
In Nigeria, a senatorial candidate from the country's opposition Labour Party was killed late on Wednesday by unknown gunmen in southeastern Egunu state, days before the presidential elections to be held on Saturday. The killing came hours after the parties and presidential candidates signed a pledge to support a peaceful electoral process as Nigerians prepare to vote in a presidential and parliamentary elections on February 25th. Chinwuba Nwubu, the Labour Party chairman in the Enugu South local government area, said senatorial candidate Oyibo Shugbu had been ambushed and killed as he traveled back from a campaign event. A police spokesperson in Enugu confirmed the incident and said they will issue a statement later. Nigeria, Africa's most populous nation and biggest economy, has a long history of election-related violence. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.